Okay, here we are. Presentation's loading up. This is Unit 1, Section 4.2, the second part of it. I'm just going to go back and look at the CIA. Excuse me here. Let me make myself disappear. Okay, just a quick review. Uh, Section 4 was dealing with, the Berlin blockade, the Berlin airlift, and some of the key terms. I just wanted to go back over to kind of melt it in the CIA and the KGB. Besides large standing armies and bombers and nuclear missiles, a big part of the Cold War was the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, to gather information around the world. And on the other side, the Soviet Union had the KGB. Again, a very similar organization, almost kind of like the CIA and our FBI kind of combined, but they're both responsible for clandestine actions all over the world against each other. Okay, so just moving forward to the new information in at the end of Section 4. Another key aspect in the Cold War that we talked about was the policies of the huge military buildups. And in 1949, the Soviet Union was able to detonate their own atomic bomb, which put them on parallel with the United States in terms of military strength. So by 1952, the United States had successfully detonated a hydrogen bomb. And again, not that this is science class or anything, but just a quick explanation about this. A hydrogen bomb splits an atom, which causes a lot of energy and a huge explosion. The hydrogen bomb will fuse atoms together for even a bigger explosion. And the first hydrogen bomb, and again, there's a video down here. Let me put the pointer up. Sorry. There's a video you can watch at any point of the test. And this is a picture up here of the test. It was absolutely devastating. They put the bomb, nicknamed Ivy Mike, on an island, and it absolutely obliterated the island and left a hole in the bottom of the ocean floor. It's very powerful. Of course, the Soviet spies from the KGB were able to get this, and the Soviets were able to have their own atomic bomb a year later in 1953. This is a little drawback to American history. This is when these fallout shelters were starting to be built in people's backyards, like the fear of a nuclear war and going underground. But the atomic bomb was devastating. The hydrogen bomb was about 50 times more powerful, and it will continue with the development of more powerful bombs as we move on. Next slide is probably one of the more interesting parts of the Cold War. Is going to be the space race, and there was a big push in the 1950s with the rocket programs to get into space, and the Russians will get there first. The Soviets will launch Sputnik. This is Sputnik over here. It's about the size of a beach ball, not really that big, but they were able to put an artificial satellite up. It was able to orbit the Earth. It really did shock the United States because we seem to always be first in these technological advancements. So the United States responded by the creation of NASA, again, long name, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, with the goal of getting ahead of the Soviet Union in terms of satellites, rockets, and of course the race to the moon, which will be the big part of this. But Sputnik did really shock the United States. Did have an impact on you high school students also back in the 1950s. The federal government really started pushing math and science programs in high school, and also language courses. And this is when the federal government started really putting money into states to improve those programs. Just a little side note there. So NASA, founded in 1958, is still around today. It is is responsible for the advancement of, our space program in terms of catching up to the Russians. NASA is still around today, of course. It's really headquartered in two big places in Texas, Houston, Texas, and Florida, and Cape Canaveral, where they where most of our rockets are launched. We will touch back on this more as we move through the Cold War. Another interesting story, and again, we're talking about these big issues in the Cold War, is pictured up top here. This is called a U-2 spy plane. And a spy plane is something that, it's not equipped with weapons, but it's equipped with cameras, and it does high altitude flyovers of countries and take pictures of everything. And we had these spy planes going over the Soviet Union, trying to find where their missile bases were. So in case of a war, we would take their missile bases out. Well, in May 1960, one of these U-2 spy planes was shot down. The CIA pilot, right here, okay, is a man by the name of Francis Gary Powers. He was shot down and captured. At first, we denied this. We denied we were spying on them, but of course, they had this picture of Francis Gary Powers or Francis Powers that they put in all the newspapers, and we had to admit we were spying on them. The key part of this was that this incident led to worsening relations between the superpowers. It's a fascinating story. I'll get into detail in class, but what happened to Powers was the KGB had him in jail. We actually had a KGB colonel in jail in West Germany, and we did a spy swap or a prisoner swap where we turned over the KGB colonel and they turned Powers over back to us. And again, just like I'm always going to keep telling you guys, there are great videos on here to watch where you can watch these spy plane incidents, this U-2 incident. So jumping ahead, the probably one of the most famous parts of the Cold War in Germany. We already mentioned the Berlin blockade and the Berlin airlift. This is going to be the Berlin Wall. And the Berlin Wall is a fascinating story. But first, let's talk about why it was needed. Remember, Berlin is divided. And again, it's this little speck over here. Sorry, should probably change the color. All right. And West Berlin was the little piece of democracy inside the Iron Curtain. Well, what was happening was thousands of East Germans, just fled communism. They just walked into West Berlin and wanted to live there. Obviously, they were leaving because of the better living conditions, better job opportunities, and one word, of course, freedom. The freedom they had living in a democracy. Well, this was a real embarrassment for the communist nations, because what was happening was that in this war of ideas, well, why are people leaving communism to go to democracy if communism is so much better? So the Soviet premier, Nikita Khrushchev, we're going to talk about him, actually do a little assignment on him. He demanded that the United States withdraw from West Berlin. President Kennedy's going to refuse, and it led to a showdown. So what was going to happen to stop the East Germans from fleeing communism and going to democracy very simply was going to be the creation or the building of the Berlin Wall. So the Berlin Wall is going to be a series of blockades around West Berlin. It wasn't in West Berlin, it was around West Berlin. And this was done in order to stop people fleeing from communism and moving into democracy. And the East German guards were actually ordered along the walls, and they were ordered to shoot people, anyone who was trying to get into West Berlin. So the wall, at first we're going to see, and there's a great video on the previous slide you can watch. At first it was a series of barricades. Over the years, over the decades, they're actually going to build big concrete walls with guard towers, with attack dogs, all sorts of provisions to keep people from leaving communism, East Germany, East Berlin, and going into West Berlin. And again, you could get into West Berlin, get on an airplane, and then fly to anywhere in the world. And it's important to note that the people that were fleeing into West Berlin were the best and brightest of East Germany. Scientists, engineers, professors, they obviously wanted to go towards freedom, and it was actually hurting East Germany and East Berlin. So that's why they wanted to stop it. Here's just some pictures here. This is the one picture I like showing up here, because you can see the guards that are standing as the wall is being built. They're making sure no one actually, jumps over and leaves. And this happened actually on a Saturday night into a Sunday morning. These barricades went up. So some people were caught on the wrong side, or the communist side. Okay, again, that's a brief description. We always get into more detail in class. Up next will be section 5, where we meet Nikita Khrushchev and talk about his brief reign. Thank you very much.